In today's show, we're talking about the Los Angeles Lakers, their 22-23 season, what it means, upcoming free agency, projections for dynasty. You know how these shows work. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. The promo code is Locked On. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. We're like 2 weeks away from the NBA draft, less than 2 weeks, 10 days, 11 days from the NBA draft, and I'm excited. I'm going to do more mock drafts coming this week. Some more draft content as well. But of course, Thursday, 22nd of June, live draft show. I'm going to be here talking about the picks as they happen, giving you fantasy information on any trades that go down, my dynasty evaluations of these players, and just generally chatting about the draft. It was pretty successful last year. I want to make it more successful this season. Thursday, 22nd June on the YouTube channel, starting at 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time. That's in the States, of course. And join me. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. I hope. I think it's going to be good. It will be good. We're going to talk NBA draft, but here we are talking about the Los Angeles Lakers, because that was a weird team. I don't think there's any debate about that, really, because this is a squad that struggled so much early on in the season that basically was the best or second best team in the NBA after the trade deadline, made it through to the conference finals, and then got swept. So, it was bad, it was great, it was even better, and then it was bad. But, losing in the conference finals, that's not a disaster. It's a really great season in the end. And for as much shit as I've given Rob Pelinka over the years for free agency moves and just his general front office philosophy, he corrected it. Now, I think there were some teams that gave him a little bit of a handball in some of the deals that they got. But in the end, those players that arrived in Russell and Beasley and Vanderbilt, they weren't actually the guys that led them. It was just really the big thing that happened was Westbrook out, Reeves in. And Reeves wasn't traded in. They just gave him a bigger role. That's all it was. And maybe that could have been successful without the trades, just by telling Russ, sit down, you're not playing. There's always locker room stuff there, but it's not like the locker room was going great anyway. So while the trades enabled the Lakers to be better, it wasn't necessarily the players that came in. It was the player that went out. And that is not necessarily me just blaming Russell Westbrook.
Price of the brick going up.
I am sort of, but it was just a poor roster construction. It's a poor fit with all those guys, and it's almost the absolute definition of addition by subtraction, because it enabled someone like Austin Reaves, who we're going to talk about a lot in this show, to jump into that larger role. Let's look at how this team looked. Warnie, sorry for letting you wait that long.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
All right, the Lakers, you'll see their numbers there, 43 and 39. That's not particularly strong. They were the 7th seed. They came through the play-in, like another team that we're probably going to be doing their season review later on this week. 17th in net rating, 20th in offense, 13th in defense. But we know that after the trade deadline, and there was a lot of injuries with Davis and LeBron as well, and LeBron, I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron has surgery coming up pretty soon, this team was just completely different. Their best lineup, you're going to be shocked to know this, was Russell, Reeves, LeBron, Vanderbilt, and Davis, which was a lineup they started a lot. There was a plus 22.2. There's still going to be questions about that lineup moving forward, because 2 of those players are upcoming free agents. We'll talk about that. Actually, we'll talk about that right now, because they're at the moment currently projected to be $54 million over the cap. They have DeAngelo Russell, Lonnie Walker as unrestricted free agents. They have Malik Beasley with a team option. Dennis Schroeder is an unrestricted free agent as well. They've got a few other randoms on this team as unrestricted. Troy Brown is unrestricted. Tristan Thompson was on this team. He's an unrestricted free agent. And then they've got the two big restricted guys, Austin Reaves and Rui Hachimura. Now, I don't think that DeAngelo Russell will be back. I don't think Beasley will be back. I think Schroeder might be. I'm pretty sure Reeves will be, and I'm pretty sure Rui will be. But I don't know about that. They're restricted guys, so they've got the advantage to bring those guys back, but it's all about how much they're wanting to pay. And then the other thing that's out there at the moment is Kyrie Irving or Chris Paul. Do one of those guys join? I think Chris Paul's a real chance to be on this team. I know there were reports of him being waived, and that was walked back that he hasn't been waived yet, and they're exploring possibilities. I think he might end up being waived and just take the $15 million guaranteed from the Suns, sign on, play with a minimum for the Lakers, which probably is an upgrade, but I don't know how much of an upgrade it is over DeAngelo Russell, especially in the regular season. Yes, DeAngelo Russell struggled in the playoffs, but Paul struggled because he wasn't there, because he got hurt again. And his style, his mid-range dependent style, and the way that he has to orchestrate an offense, how does that work with LeBron? I don't know. Could it be one of those things that we're getting LeBron's mate in here and the styles don't necessarily mesh? I'm not sure. But as we've seen, like a player like Austin Reaves is almost a perfect point guard to play alongside LeBron James. He can be a point guard. He can handle the ball. He can dribble. He can drive. He can shoot. But he doesn't need to have the ball in his hands to be effective. And that's the perfect player to play off of LeBron James. Now, there are going to be times that LeBron, at age 39, is not going to be on the court. So you're going to need someone to run things at other points. But when it comes down to it, when we get to the playoffs, or if they get to the playoffs, you need the lineups that fit with LeBron and Davis. And I'm not 100% sure that Chris Paul is that. Now, we can discuss all this when it happens and when the team comes together. But there's a lot of decisions here. Russell, Lonnie Walker, Beasley, Schroeder, Reeves, Hachimura. That's 6 rotation players who are currently out of contract. And I would expect you get 3 to 4 of them back. They do have some draft picks coming up. Pick 17 and pick 47. Good that they've got them. Will they keep them? I don't know. I don't expect either of these players to play big parts in their team, whatever they do with these picks. At pick 17, according to my mock draft database, that would be Leonard Miller. But I don't think Leonard Miller really makes a ton of sense on this team in terms of fit right now. But of course, I don't think whoever you pick at 17, if you pick, you're going to be using them anyway on this sort of a team. So I think that Leonard Miller would actually make a bit of sense if LeBron does retire maybe this offseason. I don't think so. Or retires in 2 years, or moves to another team, or they trade Anthony Davis or whatever. Leonard Miller would be a really good player to build up, but he wouldn't really do much for the team this season. And then at 47, it would be Jalen Wilson, wing out of Kansas, who I'm not particularly high on as an NBA prospect. Let's get into the individual players in a second. But before I do that, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is it's therapy, right? And there's so many things and stresses that go on in the world that we often need somebody to talk to just to help us get through every day. It's easy to get caught up in things that people need from you, but sometimes you've got to think about what you need for yourself. Like what do you need to give yourself to be able to get through and be the best person you can for others? If you spend all your time giving, it can leave you feeling stretched thin and burned out. Therapy can give you those tools to help you find that balance in your life. You can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you can give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time if you don't click with them for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Let us go on to the players. Anthony Davis. Where do we sit with Davis now? Of course, had another injury. Seemed like a pretty significant foot problem, but was 7th in per game numbers, 20th in totals, 5th in points leagues. He was drafted at 18. I would say drafting him at 18 ended up being a W because, yes, you did miss a bunch of time in the middle of the season, but he was still 20th overall in totals. He was a top 10 per game guy, and when the fantasy playoffs rolled around, he was there. He was playing. What more could you ask for? I don't know. Like, he was there and putting up those numbers at the right time of the year. Not quite as high as what they were at the end of the year, and there were some occasional gaps in what he did, but I'd say overall, picking him at 18 was a win. Now, I it was very hard to have confidence in Davis, not only because of his health, but because his level of play had declined the previous seasons as well. I wasn't just avoiding him as a first-round guy because of injuries. I was avoiding him because the level of play had declined. But he was able to play the position that helps him the most, helps his team the most, and helps fantasy the most, even though he might dislike it. He is a center. And whenever he plays at center, his numbers are better. His field goal percentage goes up, his rebound numbers go up, his block numbers go up. And all of that happened again. 34 minutes a night, 28 usage, 26 and 13, a steal, 2 blocks, 56% from the field, only 26% from 3. He's basically given up on doing that, but 78% from the line. He was amazing. And we've seen this time and time again from Davis. Play at center, your fantasy value goes up. Play at power forward, it drops off. His rebound numbers had been really, really poor the last couple of years, and they took a big step forward this season, or back to where they had been in the past. But yeah, those numbers are great. And if we get them again, he is a first-round player. But he played only 56 games. And we know there's always some sort of lower body injury with him that always seems to crop up. So you'd have a concern, but I think that, I haven't done it yet, but when we get around to doing it, first round projections and season-long projections, that he'll probably come out like 10th, 9th. And a lot of the guys around that area will have similar question marks. So, yeah, there's going to be that risk. He's 30. It doesn't feel like Anthony Davis is 30, but he is. And yet, there's nothing about what he did here that is unsustainable. His advanced numbers are great. He was 97th percentile EPM, 16th overall in Darko. You can see that he did have that big dip the last couple of seasons because he started playing out of position. And as I said, we didn't have him top 10 because his play didn't warrant it, not because he was injured. But then he stepped it right back up this season, 97th percentile in LeBron. And as you can see on the fantasy points graph, there was that little gap in the middle there where he missed all that time with the foot injury, but came back and played majority of the games down the stretch. He was just really good, and I would say most of you would suggest that he defied expectations. And when you look at his EPM graph, you'll notice there's only 2 little blue dots there. He only missed 2 games after he returned from that injury at the start of February. He only missed 2 games down the stretch and put up some really, really strong performances. So, again, I do think it was a W to draft him at that spot, even though, the injury wasn't ideal.
LeBron James.
What do we do with LeBron? I know he's like, well, maybe I'm going to retire. He didn't say those words. That's a paraphrase. I don't know where I'm going to be. I'll have to reassess my future, blah, blah, blah. I don't think he's retiring. But I'm not going to be here, look, there's no way LeBron's retiring. If LeBron's going to retire, he's going to make the year all about himself. He's going to do this huge farewell tour. Maybe. But I'm not ready to just paint him with that brush necessarily. I just don't think he's ready to retire because he's obviously playing at a super high level, but the foot injury is a real problem for him. He's had multiple lower body injuries over the last few years. I wouldn't be surprised if there's surgery involved in the offseason on this foot problem. And I think maybe some of the talk of him doesn't know he's going to be there for next season. I think he might miss the start of the season, to be honest. I think he's going to take this break here. He's going to have surgery, and he might target like a Christmas return, would be my guess, to get the foot right. That's a complete guess, and we will have way more information come out in the coming months. But this is how I'm trying to read his comments. I don't think it means retirement. I think it might mean that he just has a delayed start to the season because of the foot injury and trying to recover from that. He's 38 years old. He was amazing. 7th in points leagues, 17th in category leagues again. Again, a guy, I'm surprised his ADP was 16. I thought it was higher than that. I think Yahoo ranked him maybe in the 10s or 9 sort of range early in the season. And then people still were fading that, and I was okay with that. I think I had him 20th or around that mark, so late second round, and that's basically the area he came out as a category league player. In a points league, different story, of course. He's a much better points league player, and at 38, he played 36 minutes a night, 33 usage, 29, 8, and 7. Steals and blocks have dropped off. 3-point shooting, 32%, still got good volume, but 50%, 77 from the line, so wasn't even a punt free throw guy necessarily. He was just great again. 98th percentile EPM, 13th overall in Darko. In his own metric, not his own metric, but named after him, LeBron, he was 94th percentile. You can see that graph, just how good he's been. So it's been a decline. He has dropped off his play, but he's still, that graph shows that he's starting to decline, and you can see it falling off. He's fallen off to be the 13th overall player. And that's how much he's dipped from where he was as a peak player. Obviously broke the scoring record this season. Just another successful season. And to me, he's probably, we'll see what happens with his foot and what happens with retirement or what happens with the year. I don't think he's going to be worth a second-round pick. I don't even think he might be a third-rounder because I just worry that there is going to be such a delayed start to the season for LeBron. And we saw plenty of missed time for him with that foot injury all throughout the season. It's going to be the case for him moving forward. He only played the 55 games this season, and don't be surprised if he never tops 65 again because he's old, man. Like, that's just what happens. His EPM, you can see how much it just grew in the playoffs as well. Like, he's awesome. He remains awesome. He remains LeBron, but even when you are LeBron, at some point, the age does catch up, and we have seen that decline from superhuman to still unbelievably good. What the hell do we make of DeAngelo Russell? 59th overall player in category leagues, 45 in total, 72nd in points leagues. He was drafted at 74, so it was a huge W, actually, if you got him at that spot. He's 27. He averaged 33 minutes, 22 usage, 18, 3, and 6. Shot 40% from 3, 2.7 threes a game, 83 from the line. They're all really strong numbers. I don't think anyone should debate that. They are really strong numbers. But after the trade deadline, when he went to LA, he played just 31 minutes a night. He was outside the top 100. He averaged 17 with 6 assists. But the free throw shooting went down to 74%. It's a huge drop off there. That's a massive drop. He still hit 41% of his threes. And then we know what happened in the playoffs. He just stunk. And I don't think the Lakers would bring him back to play 30 minutes a night. Like, theoretically, he should be able to shoot, play off LeBron, handle the ball as a secondary guy. Like, that does make a lot of sense. But it just didn't work in the playoffs. And we saw him the last 2 games against the Nuggets, 20 minutes. And then he got benched for game 4 and played only 15 minutes with 4 points. He had single digits in 4 separate playoff games scoring. Like, he just couldn't do anything. So it was a real drop-off. But his regular season wasn't that. He was much better in the regular season, even though there was a drop on the Lakers. So despite him being 59th overall, he wasn't a top 100 player with the Lakers. So if he does come back and this team remains relatively intact, don't be looking at these overall season numbers from Russell as indicators of where he should be drafted. His EPM was 86th percentile. You can see that on the graph there of his Darko where he was 123rd overall. He was able to put together some okay numbers again. Like, he still looks to be a positive player, but the playoff failure is a concern. LeBron doesn't love him as much, 48th percentile overall, barely a positive player there. And his fantasy points graph, you'll see he did miss some time down the end. That was when he arrived in LA as well, because maybe to be a little bit more fair to him, he did have that injury as soon as he arrived. He only played 17 games after the break, where he came in and basically got hurt straight away. But was still able to produce at an okay level. But of course, when you look at his EPM, you see what happens towards the end of the season, and his playoff impact really did diminish pretty rapidly. And we all saw it play out because everyone was watching the conference finals, and we saw exactly what happened to DeAngelo Russell. Today's episode is also brought to you by the legends over at Prize Picks. You've got, at the moment of me recording this, you've got at least, maybe at most, one more game left in the NBA season. And that means the $1 Million Daily Superflex promotion is still running. One entry that's placed after 8 a.m. Eastern will be randomly selected each day. And if you get that 6-pick flex, well, you get the 6-pick flex, but if you get all 6 of them right, you win $1 million. If you get 5 out of 6, you get 80,000. 4 out of 6, 16,000. All it is individual player projections. You just choose more or less. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, threes, fantasy points, whatever it is. You just go more or less. And if you're that lucky person, you get that chance at $1 million. It doesn't have to be just basketball, though. Yes, this $1 million thing only runs what the NBA finals are on, but you can throw baseball in there. You can throw NASCAR, PGA, whatever other sports are available on PrizePicks. So go to prizepicks.com/million. You opt in at that link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. And once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you can be the lucky winner. You can also get 100% instant deposit match, up to $100 for new users when you enter the code Locked On. So you can go to prizepicks.com/million. You can use the code Locked On and get that instant deposit match as well. Yeah. Go do it. What's their thing? Prize Picks? Daily Fantasy Made It Easy? Yeah, there you go. And maybe win $1 million. Austin Reaves. Much like DeAngelo Russell, his overall numbers are probably a little bit misleading. 134th in category leagues, 167th in points leagues. Didn't have an ADP in the preseason, but he was drafted in 4% of leagues as people did a lot of drafts, or there were some drafts going on in December, and he was drafted there. He's 25. He's a restricted free agent. He's 2 years into his career. He played 29 minutes a game, so it wasn't as if he was only came on at the end and played big minutes. He played a decent chunk of minutes and still didn't be the top, or wasn't a top 130 player. Averaged 13 points, 3 rebounds, 3.4 assists, half a steal. Shot 53, 40, and 86 elite percentages. But the thing we want to see is what happened after the break. Well, he was a top 90 player. He averaged 17 points in 29 and a half minutes, so it's 0.7 minutes extra versus his season total. But he was able to jump 50 spots in the rankings. How did he do that? 16 and a half, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. How did he do it? He shot 58% from the field, 46% from 3, and 66% from 2. He also attempted 6 free throw attempts per game. So, always context dependent. We can look at this and go, Austin Reaves was 134th overall. Yes. He was top 90 after the break. Yes, well, that must mean, Josh, they've unlocked him and he's going to put up good numbers. And I say, I would never want to go into a season projecting somebody, especially someone like Austin Reaves, to be a 46% three-point shooter and a 66% two-point shooter, or to even attempt 6 free throws a game. Now, he's a really good free throw drawer. He's a good driver. I think he's a very good player. And I think at the start of the season, and it was somewhat facetious from me, I said, I think he's their third best player. But he clearly was. He clearly was their third best player. But that doesn't mean that it translates into being the exact same numbers for fantasy next season, because I just don't want to put faith in him being a 46% three-point shooter and a 58% shooter overall. I don't. And that'll probably lead to him. I think he'll come back. Look, he could legitimately get an $80 million contract in free agency, and I think it's actually okay. It's probably a little bit too much, but this is a guy that can come out here and can handle, can dribble, can pass, can shoot, can cut, can defend. It's a super valuable player. But a lot of what drove that post-deadline fantasy value was shooting that's got no chance of sticking. It just doesn't. No one is going to maintain that level of shooting. He had a true shooting of 73% in those 27 games post-All-Star break. It is just not going to happen. And that's important to note. Like his advanced numbers, yeah, they're in line. 79th percentile in Darko, in EPM, 138th in Darko. You can see that rise. He's really good. And I do expect a step forward from him. I expect those 29 and a half minutes that he played post-All-Star break to become 33. And that accounts for a rise in numbers. I think top 100 might be in range for him. But I also know that if we can't just extrapolate the post-All-Star break numbers for Reeves, because that level of shooting has no way of being able to stay. He had 19 usage in that time frame as well, which is a little bit up from the 16 for the season. Totally reasonable. He can be a 21% usage player. Easy. It's just that shooting, which drove so much of his value, if I have a look at his overall numbers, his field goal percentage was his best category, and his free throw percentage was his second best category. All right, so that's important to note, that if there's drop-offs there, and the free throws percentage might not drop, but volume might, then you lose a lot of what happened. And some of it can be offset by 2-3 extra minutes. Some of it can be offset by 3-4 extra usage percentage points. That's all true. But there could be a big drop coming in some of his shooting numbers. You can see that blue line on the points graph, that after the break when he came back, it just skied, because they really unlocked the best way to use him and the best way that he can help that team. And again, he was really strong in the playoffs. Big step up towards the end of the season. I expect that he'll be back with this team, and I expect that he will have a better overall season than what he had. But again, it's just that caution regarding how that happened in those last 27 games. Let's go to Jared Vanderbilt, who I think overall I would say was disappointing. He had an ADP of 122, which I was a little bit surprised to see. He ended up 140th. Yes, he played 78 games, so his totals put him at 104. But he played only 24 minutes on it. He got benched in Utah for Walker Kessler. He came to LA, and I had concerns, because I just said I'm not sure how much they're going to play him and AD together because of that lack of spacing and lack of shooting, and it, I think, sort of happened that way. He played only 24 minutes a night, 14% usage, and I think Vanderbilt is a quite valuable player. But we also saw in the playoffs that he got limited, because offensively he can't really do anything. So he wasn't able to step up into a larger role. He averaged 8 points, 7.5 rebounds, a steal. He's a very good steals guy, bad block guy. 55% overall, 32 from 3, 69% from the line. He's a solid player, but he does get a little bit overrated. And when you look at that Darko graph, he really dropped this season from where he was in Minnesota. It was not as impactful a year from Vanderbilt as what it had been in the past. 61st percentile EPM, actually a negative there. LeBron had him 13th percentile compared to starters. So we have this idea of Vanderbilt as this hugely impactful starting player, defensive player. But a lot of the stuff doesn't really bear that out. And fantasy-wise, there's just not... Look, he's a rebounds guy, yes. Field goal percentage is a positive. Steals are solid, but they're not mind-blowing. And I don't really see a situation where he is a 30-minute-a-night player. I don't think that he's that guy. There are too many weaknesses in his game. He is 24, so he's got room to grow. But he's, played 4 or 5 seasons in the NBA now? I think this might be year 5 for him. Like, he had some moments there early in Utah, but it did drop off. And as we go look at the EPM graph, you can see it's pretty flat, like relatively consistent. No big spikes, no change in environment impacting him huge amounts. Post All-Star break, he played the same 24 minutes, but actually was a worse ranked player, 158th overall there. He only averaged under 7 rebounds playing alongside Anthony Davis. He still never gets blocks. He gets some steals. Like, I don't really see the big blossoming that could happen for Jared Vanderbilt Bar at this point. So, yes, he's 24. Yes, there's still plenty of room in his career to be good. I'm just not sure that there is actually that ceiling there. Let's talk about Dennis Schroeder, because weird season. And I was doing this and preparing all this for Schroeder, and see 177th category rank, 156th in points. He was drafted apparently in 3% of leagues at 139. Okay. I am shocked that he played 30 minutes a night, because there was, and I know there's a lot of injuries and that happening, but he got to 30 minutes a night, and I can't believe that. There was games where LeBron would be out, and then obviously Westbrook was playing, and hard to play those two guys together. And then Russell came over, and Russell got hurt, and Schroeder played there. So he somehow cobbled together 30 minutes a night. And credit to Dennis Schroeder, a guy that I've been critical of in the past. He adapted his game. He turned into a lower usage player, under 19%, because he can't shoot, but he realized that. 41, 33, they're bad numbers. 86 from the line's all right. He averaged 12 points, 4.5 assists, but he turned into a much better defensive player, which is adapting your game. The 30 minutes, again, is somewhat misleading, because it was always just someone's out and he's going to play these minutes. But maybe DeAngelo Russell's not back and Schroeder is back. And he does play as a 29-minute, again, starter. Is he a 12-team upside player? Almost definitely not. But he was able to change his game around. 76th percentile EPM, 178th in Darko. And you can see on that graph, like, he was tailing off, declining. And then as the season went on, the impact went way up. And that is a credit to him. I have been critical of him, but tailoring your game and using what you can bring and your role and bringing that to this team is something that someone like Russell Westbrook wasn't really able to do, but Schroeder did and was able to provide positive value. And I think that maybe they bring him back, and maybe he is a 30-minute-a-night player again. We're not going to want to care about that for fantasy too much, but he's going to be a guy that showed that he can fit into a different system. He missed the start of the season with an injury. I think it was a thumb injury. And he had some moments. Very up and down on the blue line, the fantasy points graph, because it was like someone's out, he steps up. Someone's in, he comes off. And that's sort of how it worked for him. And there was a chunk there in the middle there where Austin Reaves was out with a hamstring injury, and he stepped up into that role as well. Now, if I was the Lakers, I think Austin Reaves is a better player, and I'd prioritize him. But there's no reason that they can't play together, that Reeves and Schroeder as their backcourt, LeBron and Davis, and then whoever else is in that spot, I don't know, with what they do with it. But Schroeder's ability to adjust, I think, was really commendable. And he played some okay defense in the playoffs as well. It wasn't stellar, but I don't think he's ever going to be stellar at this point. He just was serviceable, and that might be enough. Malik Beasley was, I would say, bad this season. A guy that you can get threes out of all the time. He had almost 3 threes a game in 26 minutes, but still wasn't a top 200 player. 184th in points leagues. He was drafted at 142 ADP. He's 26th. He's got that team option, but he was almost unplayable. He was unplayable towards the end of the season because, as I've said with Beasley before, in the past, a lot of times, if he's not hitting shots, he literally doesn't do anything else. And while he did hit his threes, he hit them at only 36%, and that's still good. It's above average. But when you do nothing else, you need to hit them at 40 because your defensive inefficiencies is very kind. Your defensive shitfulness is a problem. Your offensive shitfulness is a problem. And if the shots aren't going in, and he is one of the best at getting up threes. He gets them up, which is valuable. But you got to do something else. 13, 3.5, and 1.5, 0.8 steals. Didn't even hit his free throws that well. 7th percentile in LeBron. 392nd in Darko. 34th percentile in EPM. Huge drop-off from Beasley this season. And he can have value, but he's also just always going to be this player that flashes, has these big games, but can't do it consistently, and he can't do anything else apart from that. That's the only thing he can do, and that leads you to problems. Shout out to Joe Harris, for example. When the shot just falls away or you get hurt or something happens and you lose a step, half a step or 0.5% of whatever it is you've got, everything falls away. And I'm a little bit worried about Beasley in that respect. He's only 26, so he's not going to be out of a job. Even if they do decline that team option, he will find a role. He'll play 23 minutes a night. He'll hit 2.5 threes. He'll be an elite 3-point streamer, but really not someone you want to put a huge amount of trust in or a huge amount of value in as a player. His EPM was negative most of the season. We saw, DMPs in the playoffs as well. And this is the thing. This happens a lot. Your players get traded to play alongside LeBron. Well, all he's got to do is spot up. Playing alongside LeBron, he's going to get so many open threes. It just doesn't work that way, the way that you think it does. There are some players who get much worse. There are some players who get much better. There are some players who play one game and look good and then play shithouse after that, and we only remember the good game. And it's just never a blanket statement of playing next to LeBron, you'll get all the open threes in the world and they'll go in and you'll be awesome. It just doesn't work that way as a general rule. Beasley in LA played, 26 games, hit 2.5 threes again, only 62 from the line somehow. But there's just no supporting stats anywhere for him. He just can't do anything else. It's been a problem for him for years. He probably needs to be in a spot where he plays 30 minutes, 27 usage. He could average 20 points a game really easily with 4.5 threes and be a useful fantasy player. If he played the Gary Trent role in Toronto, 33 minutes a night, what he would do similar without steals. He could. He's going to get up those shots. But it's going to make your team so much worse that overall he's just never going to get that opportunity on a regular basis. And now we go into a bunch of... Beasley's pretty random, but a bunch of random guys here. Troy Brown started some games. I'm shocked that he's still not even 24. He feels like he's been around forever. He was 240th in category leagues. He played 25 minutes a night somehow. 12% usage, 7 points, 4 rebounds, 0.8 steals. He used to be quite a good passer as a 6'8", 6'9" wing. That seems to have gone away. He did shoot 38% on threes. It's a low volume. 87 from the line's a big improvement for him as well. I thought he was okay as a player, and he's never going to be a great fantasy option, but a guy that can sort of fill in, play some minutes on the wing, defend with some size, but it's still not the solution that you want. He's not the guy that they go, okay, there's Reaves, Schroeder, Brown, LeBron, Davis, we're set. It can work at times, and he had some okay moments, but overall, 34th percentile EPM, 8th percentile LeBron, some pretty negative metric or impact metrics. And as you can see on the fantasy points graph, he's just a terrible fantasy points player. The red line is well above the blue line, so his minutes were pretty strong. He just doesn't do enough with the ball, and that secondary, tertiary passing role that he had didn't seem to exist here in LA. Pretty negative most of the season, but as a minimum signing, he was pretty strong. Was he a minimum? No, he's not actually. So he's not even a free agent coming up. He was able to be pretty successful, played some strong games, and a guy that is a rotation player, but despite still not being 24, I'm not sure there's much more upside left in his game.
Hello.
Lonnie Walker. 248th in category leagues. He's 24.5 as well. 56 games, 23 minutes, 20 usage. He averaged 11 points, 1.6 threes, but a putrid 1.9 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 0.5 steals. And you want to talk about one of the worst fantasy players there is, honestly. And I don't think he's a particularly strong NBA player. I've said that many times. I think he's a great bloke. Don't get it confused of what I think of him as a person or anything like that. Post-trade deadline, he played 13 minutes a night. He averaged 7 points. We all know that he had that game against the Warriors where he scored 15 points in the fourth quarter. Yeah, that happened. There's absolutely no denying that. But he also played in the games against Denver. He had 6 points, 2 points, 9 points, 2 points. He had one huge explosion game. He had a couple of big minute games against the Warriors, but that game after he played 27 minutes, or had 15 points in that quarter and played 27 minutes. The next game he played 28 minutes and scored 4 points. He has these scoring bursts and people go, man, look at the bag on Lonnie Walker. Yeah, he's pull up mid-ranges. Oh man, he's cooking. Yeah, he just needs an opportunity. He's had an opportunity. We're 5 years in now. He played for a Spurs team that wasn't very good. He played on this Lakers team and started for the big chunks of the season. But it's the same thing every time. He needs gigantic usage, huge minutes, everyone to clear out of the way, and he'll still never get rebounds, steals, assists, or blocks. He'll never be a high-volume three-point shooter. He just doesn't do it. 26th percentile EPM, a negative in estimated wins, 2nd percentile in LeBron, negative 3.26, one of the worst numbers you'll see. 418th in Darko. Look at that Darko graph. Never even sniffed being a neutral player. He's been a negative his entire career. He just doesn't make sense in the current NBA. He doesn't do anything else apart from score, and you need to feed him the ball to do it, and it makes everything on your team worse. So, yes, he's a free agent. He can go anywhere. There was some talk, man, he's he's made himself a lot of money. I still don't think, despite some interesting games early on in the season where he shot like 50% from three over the beginning of the year, he's still the same guy to me. Am I being unfair on him? I don't know. You can tell me. Do you think that's unfair? I just don't think that he is a very good player. I think there's a reason that at the second half of the season, post-All-Star break, they basically took him out of the rotation and they played better. Yes, he had a knee problem all season as well, but they think they just function better without him. I don't know what he brings that is positive. 15 points in a quarter, awesome. Love that in the playoffs. Where is it every other game? It's never there. So I have zero faith in Lonnie Walker as a player ever doing anything that's an impact for fantasy or even ever being a positive real-life player. I just don't see it for him. As I said, he started off with some okay games, fueled by unrealistic shooting, and then it was just a huge drop-off. Had that knee injury in the middle of the season, never recovered. We all remember the good games from these players, and this is the sort of player that people really get enamored with, is when they have a big game, it looks great because it's on this crazy hot shooting, and people love when it's your mid-range, and he can do big, powerful dunks, but there's just so many negatives, I think, about Lonnie Walker's game that I wouldn't be prioritizing bringing him back, and if he left, oh well. And for fantasy and dynasty, I just have no interest. Again, is it harsh? Maybe. I just don't. Nothing to me seems to back up the positives. Let's go to another player. And this is what's frustrating about this Lakers team is they were fun. They had some good players, but they also brought in so many players who I just don't like their games. And I don't like their games for fantasy. And that's the same with Rui Hachimura, who was 252nd this season, 209th in points leagues. He was still drafted at 140. He's 25 years of age. He played 23 minutes a night. He had 20 usage, 11 points, shot 32% from three. Another one. LeBron's going to unlock the three-point shooting. Yeah, once he gets here, like watch so many open threes from LeBron. Sure, maybe. Shot 28% from three as a post-trade deadline. Okay. 0.9 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.4 blocks. 9th percentile LeBron, 353rd in Darko. You can see that graph. Like he did improve. And another one where we see some of the games in the playoffs where he had, and people are going to overreact, I think, to what Rui can do. We are 4 years in. He's a restricted free agent. People think he's going to get a big contract. I don't know why he would. Again, I don't really think he has proven anything. He's a guy that can hit some mid-range shots. He's had some better shooting. Absolutely, he has. He has improved his shooting prior to this year anyway. But I think that three-point shooting was maybe a little bit of an outlier in previous years. There were some good games in the playoffs. He played some good minutes. He had a 21-point game against the Warriors. He had 29 and 20 points against the Grizzlies and then dropped off. And remember, we saw those big games against the Grizzlies, and then he went 16, 7, 9, 6, 6, 21, 5, 2, 4, 9. End of the year with 17, 21, 13, and then started the final playoff game, played 42 minutes, had 10, 7, 0, 0, 0. All the opportunity, all of the minutes, and did nothing with it. We have seen opportunity for Rui so many times. Opportunity with the Lakers, opportunity with the Wizards, and he's never been a good fantasy player. And I still think he's not a particularly strong, impactful NBA player either. Not sure he can defend. Not sure he can switch. He can't protect the rim. He doesn't get steals. He can't pass. He doesn't take enough threes. He settles for mid-ranges. Sometimes they go in, and when they go in, it looks great. But he's so inconsistent that... Look, full disclosure, I did a dynasty mock draft with Matt Lawson and a bunch of other dynasty guys. I drafted Rui in that draft. I think it was in round 19 of a 12-man draft. But I did draft him because I think that there are teams that are going to fool themselves into... Not fool themselves, but they're going to pay him. He's going to get a contract. He's going to get a role. And he's going to continue to be wildly inconsistent and be basically tall Lonnie Walker. A guy that can score and do literally nothing else. And even the scoring is very inconsistent and it relies upon a healthy diet of inefficient shots. Mid-ranges, which is exactly what Lonnie does. Tall Lonnie Walker. And I know, again, people will just think that I hate Rui Hachimura. I don't. Or I hate the Lakers. I don't. Just that I don't like Rui's game. I don't like Lonnie's game. They both play for the Lakers. And here we are. And again, I think a lot of the metrics will bear this out. That there will be, and it all goes back to my narrative discussion, is that you will highlight the big games from Rui. You will highlight the big games from Lonnie. People highlight the big games. And then, look what he did against the Grizzlies. And then, 6 games in a row, of single-digit scoring. Started the last game, that's great. No contributions anywhere. And that's the thing that just gets lost in the mix, and we forget about it. But don't forget about it, because it all counts for fantasy. Every game counts, not just the big ones. Every game counts. Pretty neutral a lot of the time in his EPM. Definitely had some positive moments. I think he's a rotation player in the NBA, but I just don't think he's a guy you want to give a large role to, a large contract. He's got size, but I don't know. There's just a lot of feel that's not there for him. Last guy I'm going to talk about was their rookie that they brought in, and that's Max Christie, 430th in category leagues, 455th in points leagues. He's only 20, so he's the youngest player on that team. The other guys that I'm not going to talk about here, there is Mo Bamba on this team, who again is just another one of those players that I just don't like from an impact perspective. Now, Bumba's different to Rui and Lonnie in that when he plays, he puts up gigantic fantasy numbers, but I just don't think he's anywhere good enough to be able to play. He could be on this team again next season, but Davis and Vanderbilt will still be there, and it's just no reason for him to play big minutes. So I don't really view Bamba as any viable top 150 player because, yes, give him 28 minutes a night, he'll be a top 70 guy, no question, but no team's doing that. The other guys are Wenyen Gabriel, who showed a little bit, showed he was better than Bamba, I thought. There's Scottie Pippen Jr. and Cole Swider. They really didn't play at all. So they're the other guys there. But Christie's a guy that he did get a start early on in the season, which I was a little bit surprised to see. It's hard to judge too much here because those numbers look great. 42% from 3, 88 from the line, only on 10% usage, 3 points, 2 rebounds, 383rd in Darko, 5th percentile LeBron. That's all really negative. But we can look at his G League numbers to get maybe a little bit of a different idea of what he was able to do. He played 17 games in the G League. He averaged 14.5 points. He shot 36% from 3 on 5 attempts. That is encouraging, but only half a steal, only half a block, under 2 assists, only 1.5 free throw attempts. That's a bit disconcerting. So while there was a little bit of hype out of him after a disappointing college season, and he did start the season off strong, his G League numbers aren't particularly encouraging. And I don't look at him as a future high-level prospect or anything like that for this Lakers team. You can see he played some games early on with some decent minutes in a couple of games, and then they just said, nah, look, we got other players here, you're not for us. Maybe he gets back in, depending on what they do with Malik Beasley, but nothing really stood out to me from Christie from his first season in the NBA. And that will do it for me today. Tomorrow, I am going to do the Boston Celtics and their season review. And tomorrow is Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and we might have an NBA champion. And if we do have an NBA champion, then straight away after that, the next day, I will do the Denver Nuggets season in review if they are the champion tomorrow. Enjoy watching that show. Remember, live draft show, Thursday, 22nd of June, 7:45 p.m. Join me here on the YouTube channel. Leave comments on this video, subscribe, ring the bell, find podcasts wherever you find them. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.